Peace to everybody. This is about all your questions about Jussie Smollett's charges being dropped, answered. So whatever questions there were, they're being answered. And as you can see here in the picture is picture of Jussie Smollett. It all started after midnight on January 29th. The night Empire star Jussie Smollett says he was attacked on a Chicago street. The 36-year-old told police that he was beaten outside of the Lowell's hotel by two white men in ski masks who yelled racist and homophobic slurs and championed MAGA country. As they tied a rope around his neck and poured bleach on him. So it started there, obviously. And of course, Jussie is 36 years old. He's still young yet. Um, there was um some trouble on his way home by a hotel, and he's saying that two white men had in ski masks who had done it. Due to the serious nature of the allegations, the Chicago police immediately began investigating the incident as a possible hate crime. They even discovered a threatening letter that was reportedly sent to the actor prior to the alleged attack. It, it contained anti-gay, heroic, and a mysterious white powder. So the Chicago police, they started investigating immediately after the alleged attack happened, and they found a threatening letter that was allegedly sent to Jussie Smollett with some kind of mysterious white powder. As news broke of the shocking incident, many celebrities and politicians rallied behind the openly gay actor, both in the press and on social media. Presidential candidate Kamala Harris even called the incident a modern-day lynching, while Smollett appeared on a television interview on ABC with Robin Roberts, where he reiterated that what he told police was unequivocally true. So Kamala Harris, we know she's an evil Democrat because she's trying to get rid of medical insurance permanently, but that's not going to happen. But we're not about her right now. She's calling it the incident a modern day lynching. And while Jussie Smollett was on ABC television with Robin Roberts, he explained what happened that night and how it happened with the details that he knows about. It wasn't until early February when investigators uncovered a blurry video of two men walking near the supposed crime scene that the case took a very unexpected turn, one that would eventually cast suspicion on the actor himself. On February 20th, a Cook County, Illinois grand jury found probable cause that Smollett staged the attack. The young actor was arrested, charged with felony disorderly conduct, and released on bond shortly before being written off the hit show Empire. Smollett was also slapped with 16 more felony counts after allegedly lying to police about a hate crime. So, Smollett was going to be written off the show Empire for the last two episodes, but the investigators, they uncovered a blurry video of two men walking near the supposed crime, I should say, alleged crime scene, and they are saying that They are saying that it's are saying that it's a hate crime, but they're trying to treat it as a hate crime, but not really. Though, and he was arrested. Jussie Smollett was arrested on felony disorderly conduct. Excuse me for the coughing, dry air. And he got charged with 16 more felony counts for lying to the police. But then on March 26, prosecutors in the case abruptly dropped all charges against the Empire actor. Excuse me for coughing again. It's a shocking, confusing turn in this high-profile case. So we've answered some of the biggest questions about what may have led to the decision, what punishment Smollett may have escaped, and what could possibly be revealed next in this bizarre story. So the charges were dropped yesterday, as you know. Um, Now they want to think of it as a high-profile case, so now they had came up with questions about what took place that night. Wait, the charges against Smollett were dropped? Yes, all charges against the actor were dropped as of March 26 by the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. While the prosecutors have not revealed why they dropped the felony charges, they said the decision was made after reviewing all of the facts in light of Smollett's forfeiture of his $10,000 bond. Usually, when charges are dropped, the bond is returned to the defendant. In this case, Smollett agreed to give the bond he paid to the city, which is unprecedented, or whatever word that is. So, yes, the charges were dropped. The $10,000 bond, Jussie Smollett volunteered to give it to the city of Chicago. But even though Rahm Emanuel wants $150,000 because he's said, oh, I'm gonna sue Jussie Smollett. Yeah, okay. Let's see how far that will go with him. After reviewing all of the facts and circumstances of the case, the state's attorney's office said in a statement, including Mr. Smollett's volunteer service in the community and agreement to forfeit his bond to the city of Chicago, we believe this outcome is a just disposition and appropriate resolution to this case. As a result, Smollett will not face trial. He is a free man with an expunged record. So his record has been expunged. There's nothing. The case has been closed without going to trial. You won't find nothing on him. And even though the city of Chicago, the police department are outraged, so is the mayor of Chicago, who's an idiot himself. Weren't there 16 different charges added to his initial charge? Yes. On March 8th, Smollett was charged with 16 more felony counts of disorderly conduct for filing a false police report. The grand jury specifically returned two separate sets of charges related to the actor's allegations that his supposed attackers called him racist and homophobic slurs, used a noose, and poured a chemical on him. His testimony to police immediately after the incident, as well as his second interview with police, have both contributed to the last grand jury decision, the prosecutors said. So now the jury indicted him on 16 felony counts for making false police reports and everything else, and Jussie Smollett is trying to tell them that he's innocent and that, but the police don't believe him. All of these 16 charges were dropped as well on March 26. Smollett's attorney have also requested and been granted that the records be sealed, which means the public may never learn about the evidence against the actors. So, yeah, the records are sealed permanently, so there's nothing. His record has been expunged permanently, so you won't find nothing. What happened to the video evidence mentioned in the complaint? Any and all evidence in this case would have been considered by the prosecutors. At this point, it is unclear whether the alleged video evidence of the attack existed, and even if it did, we do not actually know what it showed or how it may have portrayed the incident in question. The very existence of evidence, or lack thereof, likely played a role in the state's attorney's office decision to drop all charges against Smollett. So the alleged video, they it was unclear that if the evidence of the attack existed or not. Do we know it existed? No, because it's nowhere around. They must have sealed that up somewhere too and not let anybody know about it. Did leaks and press appearances by the Chicago police contribute to the decision to drop charges? It may not have helped. Smollett's attorneys argued from the beginning that the police overstepped when they held the initial press conference and painted Smollett as a criminal. His attorneys likely made the case behind closed doors that the actor being vilified by the police and press would have made it next to impossible for him to get a fair trial. Yeah, it is. Yeah. So the police, they did a press conference right away. They said, oh, well, such and such, this and that. And, and they painted Smollett as a criminal. And, I don't believe Smollett is a criminal at all. I really don't, because it's a lie right from the beginning. Jussie Smollett has been maintaining his innocence, and that's how he wants to keep it. He wants to be innocent and stay innocent and just move on with his life. TMZ reported that the Chicago police are furious with the state's decision to drop all of the charges. Police Superintendent Johnson said in a press conference on March 26, "Do I think justice was served? No. Wow, Eddie Johnson's a little furious. Oh, well, that's his problem. But now he's asking, do he think justice was served? And he's saying no. But obviously, I think it has, because they don't want to see a famous actor in prison for, I think the minimum is like 3 years or something. In the same press conference, Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel also called the decision to drop the charges a whitewash of justice, citing the grand jury's decision to bring 16 felony charges after seeing a sliver of evidence. He accused the prosecutors of treating Smollett differently from other defendants because of his fame. Oh, so they're trying to say that Jussie Smollett is getting special treatment because he's famous and everything else, and now Rahm Emanuel said it's a whitewash of what happened, that with the charges being dropped. As of last week, the Chicago police confirmed they were opening an investigation into the alleged leaks in this case. So the Chicago police are confirming that they were going to look into it, which I think is a bad idea because they have no right to do that after the records have been sealed and the charges were dropped. The Chicago PD also released several police reports from the case after it was announced the charges were dropped. The reports can be read here and here. They reveal in part that Smollett was never handcuffed, placed into a cell, or subjected to the media while he was in custody. The reports do not, however, include most of the materials related to this case, and that's because a new court order has prevented the CPD from releasing any additional records. Police spokesman Anthony Guglielmini, whatever that name is, said, "We were advised at 9:30 this morning, March 27th, that the CPD records and investigative files are now under seal by order of the court," he said. So now the court has ordered for the records to be sealed and as of 9:30 this morning, so they can't get into nothing. Jussie Smollett was never handcuffed, so you know where that's gonna leave. The police, they didn't do nothing. They didn't press no charges, did not handcuff, did not put him into a cell. They did not subjected him to a media, so they lied. What evidence did the police say they had against Smollett? During a press conference on February 21st, Eddie Johnson, superintendent of the Chicago Police Department, said Smollett orchestrated and paid to stage the attack. Well, Eddie Johnson is a fool because that's not true at all. It's a cover up and it's always going to be a cover up. City of Chicago is corrupted big time. First, he said Smollett attempted to gain attention by sending a false letter to himself. When that didn't work, Smollett then paid $3,500 to two brothers, Olabinjo and Abimbola Sandaro, to stage the attack because, according to Johnson, Smollett was dissatisfied with his salary on the hit TV show Empire. So now Eddie Johnson is coming out and saying, "Oh, that Jussie Smollett staged his own attack. He staged his own false letter to himself, and of course, that if you were to um, get a fingerprint of the letter, unless they were using gloves or something they had to use, you would have to compare the fingerprints, see what person or persons have sent a letter." The two brothers Smollett allegedly hired, men he knew from working on Empire, were wearing gloves and punched the actor a little bit, Johnson said. He also said that phone records between Smollett and the two brothers show communication both before and after the staged attack. Johnson also confirmed that the police had evidence of money payment in the form of the actual check Smollett paid the brothers. Smollett claimed the payment was for services rendered in the form of fitness training. So now the brothers are supposedly and allegedly wearing gloves and punched the actor a little bit, Johnson is claiming. Well, was he there, first of all? No. So Eddie Johnson was not there to see what happened. And of course, Eddie Johnson's going to keep calling Jussie Smollett a liar. And that is just plain out wrong for him. And Also, they're saying that he made the payment for the staged attack, and it was really for fitness training. How did Chicago police come to the conclusion that Smollett orchestrated the attack? Oh boy. Commander of the Chicago Police Department, Edward Wodnicki, outlined the timeline of the investigation during the February 21st press conference. He said the investigation officially began at 2 a.m. on the morning of January 29th, when Smollett first reported that he was the victim of a hate crime. The actor was initially interviewed at Northwestern Hospital. So Jussie Smollett was interviewed by the police at the Northwestern Hospital. I don't know exactly where that's at in Chicago, but it's there. And the commander outlines the timeline of the investigations and he said that the investigation officially began at 2 a.m. on the morning of January 29th. Jussie was not hurt, said Wodnicki, other than a few scratches on his face and some bruising. He said it appeared that the scratches may have been self-inflicted. Excuse me for this coughing because of the dry air in my house. We quickly found two persons of interest on video that we believed were the likely offenders in this case, said Wodnicki. About 35 different police cameras and 20 private sector cameras were used to track the suspects. The two brothers seen in the video were eventually identified through a rideshare service they used to flee the scene. So there's like tons and tons of cameras, like 35 of them, and 20 private sector cameras, and eventually the two gentlemen were identified through and they used to flee the scene. On Friday, February 15th, after 47 hours of the brothers being in custody and hours of interrogation, they were no longer considered suspects in the case. Based on the evidence the brothers provided, including the payment from Smollett, the state attorney's office approved charges against the actor. So now, after all these 47 hours of interrogation, the brothers were no longer suspects, and that they approved the, and of course they provided every evidence as you could think of. Additionally, Smollett had been reluctant to meet with investigators for a follow-up interview, and while he has every legal right to not answer questions as per his attorney's advice, some critics argue from the beginning that his story has holes in it, like the 40-minute gap between the supposed attack and when police were conducted. So all these interviews, of course, Jussie went back for a follow-up interview, and he does have a right not to answer any questions. That's his right. They really can't make him answer certain questions. Another red flag for investigators early on may have been when Smollett initially refused to turn his phone over to the police. At the time, the police were trying to establish a timeline of the attack based on Smollett's own statement that he was speaking on the phone to his manager when the alleged attack happened. Though he eventually provided redacted phone records to investigators, it's unclear if any of the phone records were edited. It appears that the phone records showing communication between Smollett and the brothers came from the brothers' own phone records, which they handed over willingly. So there was an alleged, Jussie Smollett had allegedly talked to these two men on the phone, and he refused to give the phone over to the investigators, and they were because they were trying to establish a timeline of the attack on Smollett's own statement, and when they asked for the phone, he's like, "No, I'm not giving it to you." The state's attorney's office would have reviewed all of the evidence before making the decision to drop all charges. So, yeah, the state's attorney's office did a lot of reviewing before dropping the charges. What happened after Smollett was charged? Because Smollett was charged with making a false police report, a felony disorderly conduct charge that could bring jail time and or monetary fines. He was booked by police and had a bond hearing on February 21st. During the hearing, Smollett faced a judge to officially make his plea. The judge granted a bond of which Smollett was required to pay $100,000 based on the defendant not being a danger to the community or a flight risk. He paid 10% of that, as is standard. He was also asked to surrender his passport. So Jussie Smollett had to surrender his passport. His bond was $100,000, but he paid 10% of that, so it was like $10,000. And uh, he was also charged for a false police report, a felony disorderly conduct charge, and it could have brought jail time for him, but it didn't. How did Smollett respond after being arrested? The Empire actor has maintained his innocence from the beginning of the investigation. On March 14th, he pleaded not guilty to all charges and denied any involvement in fabricating the attack. So that's what he did. He pleaded not guilty and he denied any involvement of the attack. On the night of February 20th, his lawyers released a statement saying, like any other citizen, Mr. Smollett enjoys the presumption of innocence, particularly when there has been an investigation like this one with information, both true and false, have been repeatedly leaked. They also added, given these circumstances, we intend to conduct a thorough investigation to mount an aggressive defense. So there was like a true and false allegations, presumption, innocence, and yeah, with the information, yeah, there's truth and there's false in there. So it's kind of mixed up, mixture of everything in there. What is Smollett saying now? Since the charges were dropped, Smollett spoke briefly outside the courthouse. He thanked his family and friends, the people of Chicago and around the world who supported him. He added, I've been truthful and consistent on every single level since day one. This has been an incredibly difficult time. Honestly, one of the worst of my entire life. But I am a man of faith and a man who has knowledge of my history and would not bring my family, our lives, and the movement through a fire like this. I just wouldn't. So yeah, he thanked God, his family, friends, the attorneys, everything. So after all the charges were dropped, he also signed autographs and said he would continue to fight for the betterment of marginalized people everywhere. So yeah, he's out there signing autographs, thanking people and everything. His attorneys also said in a statement he was a victim who was vilified and made to appear as a perpetrator as a result of false and inappropriate remarks made to the public, causing an appropriate rush to judgment. The statement adds, the entire situation is a reminder that there should never be an attempt to prove a case in the court of public opinion. That is wrong. It is a reminder that a victim, in this case Jussie, deserves dignity and respect. Dismissal of charges against the victim in this case was the only just result. They said that Smollett is relieved to have this situation behind him and is very much looking forward to getting back to focusing on his family, friends, and career. So yeah, so with the police judging him right away, they had no time, they had no right to do that, and because it was vilified and to appear, and they made him appear to be a perpetrator, which that was a lie. And of course, Jussie Smollett deserves dignity and respect. And now that, and all he wants to do now is move on with his life and forget about all this. Was Smollett facing jail time if was convicted? Yes, the charge for filing a false police report is a felony in Illinois. Technically, it's considered a Class 4 felony, the least serious of all possible felony charges, but it still carries a sentence ranging from 1 to 3 years in prison and fines up to $25,000. So, if he was convicted, he could have been facing 1 to 3 years in prison and the fines up to $25,000. In order to have charged Smollett, the investigators needed to prove to the grand jury that he knowingly lied to police about the incident, which resulted in a false police report. The actor could also have been forced to pay restitution for the cost of the investigation, which, given the high profile nature of the case, could have been substantial. As this case moved forward, prosecutors may also have been considered adding an obstruction of justice charge, which basically would have meant that Smollett would have stood accused of knowingly resisting or obstructing the work of an investigator. This could have also carried jail time. In other, so they try to say that um, was Smollett that the investigators could have proved it to the grand jury that Jussie Smollett was making a false police report, and also um, even the prosecutors, they could have been in trouble as well, but they're not, so they just quickly um, have the charges dropped and have his records sealed. And if the prosecutors were to get in trouble, they could have been in jail as well. The 16 additional charges that were added and since dropped each also carried up to 4 years in jail or probation. I would have took the probation, forget about the jail. At that point, one of the best case scenarios for the actor could have been to plead to a misdemeanor to avoid prison time. But again, given the high profile nature of the case, a judge may not have been so lenient as to accept the plea. Smollett could have ended up facing a very public criminal trial. Even before he was formally charged, he hired two criminal defense attorneys, Victor Hernandez, or Henderson, I'm sorry, and Todd Pug, who said they intend to vigorously defend their client against all charges. So The 16 charges that were dropped, they could have carried up to 4 years in prison as well, or on probation. And but then again, it was a high-profile nature of the case, and a judge would not have been so len- lenient or whatever that word is as to accept the plea that quick. What about the threatening letter Smollett says he received? Johnson said during the original press conference of February 21st that the police believed Smollett did fabricate the letter. Both the FBI and U.S. postal inspectors were investigating the letter, which said, "You will die, black faggot," and I'm sorry, but this is not my words, this is their words. In cutout magazine letters, it also featured a stick figure hanging from a tree. Oh, so the FBI and the U.S. postal inspectors, they were investigating the letter real carefully, and now they had to deal with that. At this point, it's unclear if Smollett will face any charges for the letter. If charges are brought, Smollett could be charged with federal and mail fraud, which carries its own set of criminal charges beyond what he was facing in the state of Illinois. To be convicted of mail fraud, a prosecutor would need to prove that the actor intended to perform a fraudulent act and that he used the mail purposely to execute it. So, yeah, it could have carried its own separate sentence. Who knows how long that would have been? And Smollett could have been charged with that one, but he wasn't. But who knows what will happen with that one? Charges for being convicted of mail fraud range from fines up to $250,000 to prison time up to 20 years. Other lesser options include probation or even making restitution. The penalty really depends on the severity of the case and the criminal history of the person or persons involved. So that's a $250,000. Oh wow, that's a lot of money to pay up, and to a prison time of 20 years. So now we know what the mail fraud would have been for. What happens when someone is charged with a felony? A felony remains on a person's criminal record for the duration of his life. It may preclude him from certain things like being able to vote or even run for and hold political office. Felons are also disqualified from jury duty for at least 7 years. Felons are also unable to own firearms, so that's what if someone was charged with a felony crime like that. This is what happens when you won't be able to vote, you won't be able to run or hold political office because felons are not allowed to have that, and felons are not allowed to have firearms in their possession at all. In addition, felons risk losing permits or licenses for work depending on the nature of the crime. As a convicted felon, Smollett could have also been denied approval as a foster or adoptive parent. Landlords can even evict a tenant who is deemed dangerous to the residential community. But even if the case would have proceeded and a trial found Smollett guilty, prosecutors would have been hard pressed to prove that Smollett was a danger to the community. So the landlords, they do have a right to turn you down because of that person, of losing their risk of permits or license for work. And it's all depending on the nature of the crime that have been done. Bottom line, if Smollett were would have been convicted of these felony charges, he would have very likely served jail time, paid fines, or be put on probation. It would have ultimately depended on a judge's discretion and the seriousness of the charges. So yeah, it would have been jail time, but it all depended on what the judge's discretion would have been. Has Smollett had any other trouble with the law? In 2007, Smollett pleaded no contest to three misdemeanor counts related to a DUI in Los Angeles. One of the counts was integriously giving false information to the police. Boy, I tell you, a DUI in 2007. Wow. That, of course, giving false information. What is this? The actor reportedly gave police a false name when he was arrested, that of his brother, Jake. As such, he was charged with false impersonation as well as driving under the influence and driving without a license. He was sentenced to 3 years probation. He also completed a mandatory alcohol treatment program. Oh, so he gave the police his brother's name, and it was a false name, obviously. His brother Jake Smollett. And he was sentenced to 3 years probation, and he had a mandatory alcohol treatment um, program to complete. What happens to Smollett now? It's unclear if his bosses at Empire, who initially removed the actor's character, Jamal, at the end of the new season, will rehire him. Chris Alexander, a spokesperson for 20th Century Fox Television and the Fox network that produces the hit show, said in a statement, Jussie Smollett has always maintained his innocence, and we are gratified that all charges against him have been dismissed. So now they don't know if they're going to rehire him at all or not, because they're saying that he has always maintained his innocence. There's no word on whether the state's attorney office will reveal any more about why they dropped the charges, but the two brothers who said they helped to stage the attack against Smollett said just this week that they feel betrayed by the actor. So yeah, the brothers are claiming, saying that they feel betrayed by Jussie Smollett. I find it hard to believe with that one. I believe my clients were betrayed, the brothers' attorney, Gloria Schmidt, said on CNN on Monday, March 25th. They feel regretful that they put their trust in the wrong person. So you know CNN is going to come out and lie about this mess as usual. CNN is not to be trusted. CNN is a bunch of lying rats, and as you can see there, the next thing to watch for will be if Smollett's attorneys files a wrongful suit against Chicago. So now they're waiting to see if they'll file a wrongful suit against Chicago. So hopefully, we don't know if that will help or not. And that if the city of Chicago will have a wrongful suit against Chicago, Smollett attorneys do decide to go ahead with that suit or not. Leave your comments below, and I am out.